To hell with the date on your birth certificate. Let's talk about what we have in common across generations. Life, sex, and tech at any age. Welcome to Age Blind with Nancy A. Shenker.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the latest episode of Age Blind, where we focus on things that we have in common across all generations. And because it's Oscar month, March, and the Oscars just aired a couple of days ago prior to this recording, we're going to be talking about everything related to movies, which is a great category that clearly cuts across all generations. So I've assembled a really fun intergenerational team for this episode of people who are really passionate about the movies. And we'll start with my sidekick, Robin Quivers to my Howard Stern, Kyle Decker. So if we just quickly go around the room and everybody can introduce themselves, say who they are and what their day job is.
Hi, I'm Kyle. I'm a podcast producer. That's it. There you go. Your question has been answered.
Corbin, you're up next.
I'm Corbin. I run a content creation company with an emphasis on storytelling. So we make videos, photos, and really anything content based. And I also have a pretty heavy marketing background. So we're always focused on marketability and, relating to your audience members and building that kind of thing.
I could really tell you're better at marketing with the way that you actually went more in depth rather than just, I'm a thing. Well, we tell stories and we do things here. And yeah.
Yes. So actually, Kyle, as I mentioned, is my podcast producer, and Corbin is my video guy, and we are more than 40 years apart. And because we both love storytelling, it's like Martian mind meld. I've only met him a couple months ago at Industrious, where we both had our offices, and he had comic books hanging on his wall, which is how we met. So Saltbox, which stands for Sex, Life, and Tech, this format of random people getting together to talk about a topic, this is proof positive that intergenerational collabs can work because we were brought together by our mutual love of comic books. Melissa, I love your story.
I am a documentary filmmaker, and I make films about older women, older people. I'm a storyteller, and I love the stories and the depth of the story with an older individual. So I have 2 films out right now. I didn't become a filmmaker till I was 65. I'm almost 75 now. So this is just to show you, we still have passion and get up and go, no matter how old we are. I was lucky to meet Nancy at a meeting in Rhode Island. The 333 Collective is a group of women all over the age of 50, I think. What they're doing is amazing to bring people together. And it started during COVID so that we could all, no matter where we were in the world, we could connect with one another, share our stories, and grow from there. And that group has grown tremendously. And Nancy is a part of that as well.
Yeah, and Melissa previewed her movie Climbing into Life at the Gathering last summer, and I have a fear of heights, so I was like, it might as well have been a horror movie for me, but it was about the mother of the free solo guy who decided to climb El Capitan at the age of 65. So just watching her scale a mountain that went straight up scared the crap out of me. So as I said, it might as well have been a horror movie.
It was pretty creepy getting up to the point where they start to climb. Nobody told me, but in order to film them, you have to get up to where they start to climb. So it's 1,000 feet up over treacherous boulders. And
Nice.
I wasn't quite prepared for it, but it somehow made it up there with the help of a couple of people. And it was a fascinating film.
And unlike Free Solo, she did use things to keep her from falling to her death.
Yes.
And Jamie and I met on Facebook. So we met cute. Tell everybody what it is that you do and what your connection to the movies is.
Sure. I am a publicist in recovery. I owned a PR and event firm for 20 years in the music industry. And I closed my business and I was depressed and I was up at night. And I wound up wanting to talk about a show I was watching. So I created a Facebook group. And then there was a pandemic. So it just exploded. So now it's a social media platform We have Instagram and Facebook. We don't have TikTok. I'm sorry. I'm not getting it. I can't handle it.
Same.
That's what we do. And we have wonderful members, and it's not that deep and no drama. You just go in there, ask people what they're watching and or what you like to watch, and they'll give you a ton of recommendations. It's very
Cool.
fun.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Goodreads for movies and and streaming TV shows, called Binge or Cringe. So I'm always checking it out for recommendations because, like any great community, you get to know the people, even though they're totally random strangers, and you take their recommendations or you discuss. So yeah, that was something that happened during the pandemic that it's good to see that has carried on. And to your point, Jamie, it's a great example of using social media for good rather than evil, building community and finding common interests. So my first question was, what is your connection to film? I think you all really answered that. But what I would love to hear, just going around the room, starting with Jamie, is what are some movies and genres that have really had an impact on your life? And I know whenever someone says, what's your favorite movie of all time? I can never answer it. I'm like, give me a genre and then I'll tell you. But what are some movies that you could watch over and over and over again? Or when you're channel surfing, you see them and you go, oh, I want to see that again or see part of that again. So Jamie, what's in your top 3 maybe?
Okay. So the first one I would say is 16 Candles, which I'm not sure Kyle or Corbin has ever seen.
I've seen it. I
I
saw
love it. I
16
love it.
Candles.
That's a good
Yeah.
That's great.
So that was one of my favorite movies. I think one of the things I loved is in a lot of ways, I was sort of a quirky, nervous girl. And I love a good love story and the fact that there was all these crazy things going on, but also at the end of the day, that the girl got the boy. The girl who might not have been so popular got the most popular boy. So that's number 1. Number 2, which is in the same theme, is When Harry Met Sally, because between that and 16 Candles, it's dashed any hopes I will ever, it has ruined me. I will never have a relationship like that. Maybe I will, but it really just, it was a letdown after I watched that one. And another one is Annie Hall. As far as being a Jewish person and the dialogue and the story, and I love when someone tells a great story. It was just an incredible film. Perfect.
Interesting. So it's all older films. Is there anything that's more recent? Before we went live, we were talking about our Oscar picks. Which was your favorite of the movies you saw this year that you would put up on the top of the list?
I didn't agree with this pick, but I do think A Complete Unknown, now that I understand the whole thing, because I'm a little bit younger, and the whole point was he's a complete unknown. And that's where in the film you learn nothing, but I wasn't that. I had to take a moment to put that together. But I think it was very well done. I think Timothy was amazing. I thought the, reenactment of the Newport Film Festival was wonderful. And I love rock and roll, just like Joan Jett, but I'm aging myself there too. So there you go.
Melissa, what about you? I mean, you work in the business. And if you don't mind just telling our listeners how you first got into the film business, because that is in and of itself an interesting story.
Well, Nancy and I have a very similar background as far as when we were children, we were really interested in movies, and I was. And when I was 9, I was taking out books from the library, from the bookstore, buying books to understand how they made film. I was always curious about film, and I used to go when it was 25 cents for a matinee, believe it or not. And that's when the parents let all the kids, 9 years old, walk into the movies by yourself because there weren't any pedophiles sitting in the bushes for when you came out. So we did that every weekend, and I became a movie buff as a child. However, nobody in my family ever took any of my conversations seriously. When I would talk about, ooh, I would like to make a film. Ooh, this would be fun. That's not the path that little girls took back in the 50s and the 60s. So I never thought that it was possible because I thought you needed people to agree with you about what it is that you wanted to do. So I I spent my life in nonprofits and then a big, big job in the corporate world. And then one day at 65, I was like, what the hell am I doing? Why am I still here? Oh my God, I'm 65. The clock's ticking and whoa. So I made a list of all the things that I hadn't done, and film kept rising to the top. And the question was, why didn't you do it? And why not? So,
And why not now?
yeah, why not now?
Yeah, and
So
you
I
said you
did.
had a chance meeting with M. Night.
I did. I left a congressional meeting in Washington, D.C. early, came back to where I live outside of Philadelphia, and decided not to go back to work. And I went off with a friend. We were on a dirt road, dropping her kid off at the horse barn. And she said, I think they're making a movie here. And I looked over, and sure enough, it looked like a film. I thought, because of the spooky setting, I said, I bet I know who it is, because he lives right here next to us. M. Night Shyamalan. Pulled out the iPhone, looked it up, boom. A picture of where we were sitting showed up on his website.
Wow.
Saying M. Night Shyamalan making a micro-budget film, The Visit. Talk about a spooky movie. And there was a thing called Charity Buzz, a red button, pushed it, win a day on the set. So I thought, oh my God, this is happening when I'm thinking about what do I want to do next? And I won the day on the set with him and spent 10 hours with him behind the camera. And when he said to me, what do you do? And I tried to explain my big fat corporate job to him, and he kind of glazed over, and he said, oh God, what do you really want to do? And I said, oh, that's easy. I said, I want your job. He said, well, you better hurry up, because he knew how old I was. And, it hit me like a ton of bricks. And I went home that night, destined to try to make a film, went to work the next day, gave my notice, and that's where it all began. And now I have 2 films under my belt, and I'm starting on a 3rd.
Cool. And favorite movies of all time?
Wizard of Oz. I'm going way back now. Fantasy, weird. I was always mesmerized by how the hell did they make this film.
But apparently it sucked at the box office, and it didn't become that.
It did not. It did not.
I actually have a snippet about, fun facts about the Oscars and the number of movies that did not perform well at the box office, but now are timeless.
Yeah. And I mean, I've watched that film maybe 30, 40 times in my lifetime.
And the flying monkeys still scare the crap out of me, even
Yes.
though the
Wicked-
special effects are. I prefer the original flying monkeys to
I
the
know.
ones in Wicked.
Yeah.
I think sometimes.
I absolutely agree with that. I also love Alfred Hitchcock, and Rear Window is one of my favorite films, with the camera angles and how you can make a huge story in one room. I was mesmerized by that as a kid, and I still am. And I just watched it again for a movie club that I have on the 333.
And there's nothing like the original Psycho, because you never actually see blood, but
Yeah.
it is so terrifying
Yeah.
that, you don't need a lot of gory stuff for a movie to be really scary.
Yeah. Yeah. And then another one way back that I bet none of you have watched, from 1958, On the Beach. Anybody see that?
No.
No. Try
Put
to
it on the
find it.
list.
It's
I'm
hard
writing
to
it
find.
down.
There is a newer film on the beach, a recreation, and I forget what year they did it. Maybe it was in the 70s or 80s, but that's not it. It's 1958, On the Beach.
Oh, post-apocalypse from 1959.
Holy
That's cool.
crap. It just killed me when I saw it. I think I was 9 or 10. And then I watched it again several more times over the years. And sitting today in the world that we're in, if you watch On the Beach, you could see the potential of the world ending. And I remember that fear that it put into me, and that even at a young age, I knew that I needed to understand more about the world and politics and why things go the way that they go. So it's an incredible film, and everybody should watch it.
Yeah, and I heartily recommend, politics aside, The Apprentice was really a great movie because it
Mhm.
gave you a lot of insight into
Mhm.
Trump's early days, which I knew the story already because I grew up in Queens. But between Jeremy Strong and the actor who played Trump, it was so spot on that you almost
Mhm.
forgot that you were not watching the real thing.
Yeah.
I gotta watch it because I know actors can do different roles, but I only know that guy as the edgy metal arm man from the Captain America movies. So the idea of him playing Donald Trump is just very funny to me.
Yeah. And what's always fascinating to me is when you see an actor playing a real person. And, it was like complete unknown watching Timothy Chalamet play Bob Dylan. You
Right.
almost forgot that it wasn't Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
Why it was crazy. It was so transformative.
So, Melissa, quickly, favorite Oscar nominated film?
Here I'm gonna be honest with you. I have not watched all the films yet, so I don't have a favorite. And the reason is because I'm working on I just finished a sizzle reel, and I was doing that Sunday. So it's been crazy, but the list is long that I'm going to watch. I did watch Conclave, didn't like it, hated the ending. I couldn't. Did anybody else watch it?
No, as I said,
No.
I created a new title for the genre. I called it Pope Fiction, like any religious drama. I mean, I want to see Isabella Rossellini because I love her, but men in papal gear it doesn't do it for me. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but the ending is just so bizarre, and I was surprised it was nominated, honestly. But then again, the actors that were in it probably held some kind of esteem for the voters, and that was probably it. But I didn't like it. But now I have a little bit of break, although I'm leaving for a film festival on Thursday in Iowa. So for the next couple of days, that's what I'll be doing is watching.
Corbin, let's now get a cross-generational perspective. We've like gotten the 80s here and the 50s. By the way, another old movie that was actually an Oscar winner is the movie Marty,
Yes.
which is about kind of a loser guy who lives with his mother but wants to find love, with Ernest Borgnine. And it's been years since I saw it, but I'm now like compelled to rewatch it because it's like the precursor to Tinder and Bumble was this guy who just like can't find, or 90 Day Fiance. Like there was a character this season who lives with his mother. And I was just watching and thinking, this is the modern day Marty. There are no new stories. There are just like, updates to timeless themes, which is why the movies are so amazing. Corbin,
Yeah.
love to hear your perspective as somebody who actually works we all kind of work in the industry because we're storytellers and filmmakers and film community organizers. So Corbin.
Yeah. Well, so Jamie, to your point, well, a lot of kids probably don't know John Hughes movies. I grew up with like the coolest parents. My dad was a child of the 80s. I grew up with my grandparents. And so we grew up listening to the Bee Gees and watching all these older movies. So one of my favorite movies is actually Ferris Bueller. It's just such a great movie. It's a movie that I can just turn on anytime and watch. And so that's kind of like just my memories of like these older movies. The newer side of it, one of the movies that really just kind of rocked my world was Memento, Christopher Nolan. I'm not sure if anyone's seen it.
Mhm. Yes.
But what I really loved about that movie was it introduced me to this idea that story doesn't have to be told linearly, because if you've seen the movie, it takes place very out of order. And it's just a really cool concept because I was in film school and I took a bunch of writing classes, and one of the things they tell you is like, don't lose your audience. Don't let them get super confused. And Nolan kind of just flipped that on its head and was like, no, it's okay. We're just going to let you get confused and you'll figure it out later.
Yeah, Strange Darling, which is a movie that my cousin Kyle Gallner is in, is similar. It's 6 chapters told out of order, and you really have to pay attention because it requires it's like doing a really difficult Wordle. You have to like really keep your mind straight. And then you still might have to go back and Google what the hell just happened, or did I miss that?
Yeah. And it's great. I also love Pulp Fiction for that same reason. You have to watch it twice before you understand it. And then Melissa, you brought up Hitchcock. I love Alfred Hitchcock. Rear Window is also one of my favorite movies.
Yeah.
And I was in New York back in May, and I was walking in Greenwich Village, and I looked over and saw like the apartment complex, not realizing I was looking at it. I'm like, this looks so familiar. And I looked it up and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm standing where they shot this movie. And it's so great. It's so cool. But yeah, I love Hitchcock is great. Psycho's amazing. I like new movies too, but I love older movies.
Yeah, and we were talking about the fact that because they were working without a lot of special effects sophistication, there is no real blood in Psycho other than like swirling down the drain in the original Psycho. And sometimes when they make remakes, they kind of screw it up because it's so interesting when you see what early stage filmmakers did without a lot. Like one of the great stories of Citizen Kane is there's a scene where he like destroys a room and they did it without computer generated graphics. And they were just praying that they could do it in one take because
They're
there
ruining
was no way
everything.
to fix it if he fucked it up. So
Yeah.
story. And he's a great example of somebody else who was multi-talented. You know, first and foremost, he was a storyteller. But I'm always upset when younger people tell me that they've never heard of Citizen Kane or they don't know who Orson Welles is. Yeah. So this is something I'm hoping to bring to the world through the Salt Box and through Age Blind is exposing all generations to things that other generations like and hold dear.
My friends and I watched Citizen Kane a couple years ago, and all of us, I think, were a little bit hoping that we're like, all right, everyone calls it the greatest movie of all time. So I think we were all kind of hoping a little bit it'd be a dud, and then we walked away being like,
Wow.
dang, that was
It's
a good
truly
movie,
great.
though. Shockingly, the greatest movie of all time is pretty good, actually.
Yeah.
So, Kyle, you are definitely a little bit of an outlier in terms of the genre that's your favorite.
Yeah, so I'm going to have to put on a bunch of clarifiers for mine, because if you asked me for transformative TV shows, I'd have a list of 3 like that. But we're not doing that, and I'm not going to be contrarian. I'm going to stick with movies. And what I'm going to stick with is specifically what movies I would have said in college, because those are the 3/4 that I always think of, and they all fall under the realm of romance. So one of the first movies that got me, this was probably in high school I watched it, and I was like actually thinking about movies, was 500 Days of Summer.
Great movie.
Great movie.
I just really, and I'll pair it together actually with the next one, which is Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Yeah.
Because both movies, in my opinion, have the same theme that often is missed, which is to be good in a relationship, you need to actually work on yourself as a person. And they both have different, very flashy ways of showing it. One of the very few video things I've made, it was a video, I don't have the award for me, but I actually got 2 local awards when I was in college for like a local Iowa film festival, was based on the expectations versus reality scene from 500 Days of Summer, which is basically you're going to show 2 scenes at the same time. And the point is that you're able to basically follow both of them enough to figure out how they work in relation to each other.
Did you see Sliding Doors with Gwyneth Paltrow?
I did not see Sliding Doors.
That was
Definitely
good.
worth a watch. It's also like a kind of split screen, 2 different paths in the same movie.
Ooh, that's fun.
Yeah, it's
And
good.
I'm not a big Gwyneth fan, but that was a great movie.
It was a
Yeah.
good film.
So those 2 I kind of lumped together, and then my first place, which I'm also going to lump together, is either Castle in the Sky or Tangled. They're both basically the same movie in that it is a story about just adorable kids. Well, I mean, technically Tangled, they're adults, but like just going off, having a silly adventure and falling in love along the way. And they're just very sweet and simple and straightforward. And I appreciate that about both of the movies. So if I wanted to do the more, pretentious is the wrong word, but if I wanted to do the more, I watch movies pick, I'll go Castle in the Sky. But also, I think Tangled, it's a Disney movie, but it's a pretty good time. It's fun. You've got a little chameleon. He tries to murder a woman. And he only fails because she was already dead.
Ooh, that sounds pretty dark for
Spoiler.
Yeah.
really. That's like, telling everyone the ending of The Sixth Sense. Like,
Well, I didn't say who. I'm just saying that he's one of the few Disney animal companions who has explicitly, on screen, attempted murder.
Okay. So,
Interesting.
Kyle, you're a romantic.
I do, yeah. Oh, I do like romance. That's why I like honesty and realism with romance, which is why I like 500 Days of Summer and Scott Pilgrim a lot, because I think they're both very important, and I think the lesson is often missed. Like when I first heard of 500 Days of Summer, one of my friends was like, "Oh, it's gonna make you feel terrible when you're single." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" I literally, when I was broken up, I watched that movie because I was like, the whole point is it was a bad romance. You needed to grow as a person. But yeah, I do. I guess I do like romance movies, even though I don't feel like that's a genre I go out of my way to find.
Yeah, I mean, growing up in the 1960s, I used to go with my mother and my brothers to the aptly named Utopia Theater, which was only one screen, which I think has since been transformed, like all movie theaters, into a multiplex. But, it reeked of stale popcorn and, this floor was all sticky. And my mother would just take us to the movies for entertainment. But I remember watching the early James Bond movies with like Pussy Galore, and it was like action and sex. And it was like, and I remember my mother, being mortified that there were these women in bikinis sleeping with Sean Connery, but it didn't seem so bad to me. I'm like, oh, when I grow up, I want to wear
I
a
want to do that.
leather bikini and
A
sleep with
bikini.
Sean Connery. But then I remember she whisked us out of the theater when Whatever Happened to Baby Jane came on the screen. And of course, I had to see it as an adult, and it was pretty terrifying. So thank you, Cynthia, up in heaven, for dragging me out of the theater. I would have been many sleepless nights thinking about that movie, because even as an adult, it kind of freaked me out.
Yeah.
So
The only movie I was dragged out of was Ants. I don't know if anyone has seen Ants with a Z. I think it was a Woody, what's his last name? And it like has a war scene at the beginning, and it's like an animated movie. And yeah, I mean, it's a Woody Allen movie. It's not kid focused, but we didn't know that. So that's the only movie we left. And then we went to see A Bug's Life, and I was really mad because I wanted to watch a movie about ants. And it turns out A Bug's Life was about ants, so I was happy.
That's funny. Ants was actually that was DreamWorks's. I think that was DreamWorks that made that. But the only reason they made that is because they found out Pixar was coming out with Bug's Life, and they're like, we need to make something now. So it was very much just kind of thrown together. They talk about it in the book Creativity Inc. But yeah, Ants is literally just a competitor to Bug's Life, and they're basically the same
wow.
movie.
How about that my cousins were babysitting me? I did go through the whole Grease thing, but the first one was Animal House. I was like, 5. I don't even know.
No!
And the second one was the Amityville Horror.
Wow.
And my
Wow.
sister used to be like, Buzz, Buzz. Like she pretend, because there's this whole thing
Right.
with
Yeah, yeah.
flies. And I
Yeah.
totally she scared me so bad that I hit my chin and I lost my teeth.
Oh no!
Wow.
Well, it's interesting just talking about this, because, this really is a testament to the power of movies that we have all, whether we're in our 20s or in our 70s, we have memories of films that we saw as a kid that have left a permanent imprint on our lives. Like I remember watching Carrie with my older daughter one Halloween, and she screamed so loudly at the end that she woke up my ex-husband and my younger daughter, because, movies like that, when you just think it's over and then something happens, that's pretty traumatic. So
Yeah.
So
still,
Pig's Blood is too. That's traumatic.
yes.
Totally.
Yeah. And, again, Hollywood, there is some original stuff out there. I loved Honora, which won this year, and it deserved to win because it was an indie film with a reasonable budget and really compelling characters. Like you really wanted to know what would happen with the characters, which to me is always a fabulous movie, when you get so engaged in their lives that when it's over, you really want to know more.
Yeah.
I have so many favorite movies on my list. It's hard to even limit them. I used to love watching Coal Miner's Daughter with Sissy
Oh,
Spacek.
yeah.
I don't know
Yes.
why. I also just kind of had a Sissy Spacek obsession, for lack of a better term. When she was younger, she was in some really good movies, including Carrie, but has done some dramatic roles. She was actually in Ray Donovan.
Yes.
So, she's still acting selectively. But yeah, so just too many to list. I always watch Shawshank when it's on.
So good.
I've only seen it once from start to finish, but I'll watch snippets of it. I've seen almost all of the Oscar nominees. I skipped Conclave, and I tried to watch The Brutalist. I'm sure it's available now, but when I downloaded it, I didn't have a high def enough TV to see it. But I have to watch that one at home because it's 3 hours long, and this way I can take breaks. So there's a limit to how long I can sit in a movie theater these days. There's a theater literally 2 minutes walking distance from my house. So just quick poll. Do you still watch movies in the theater, Jamie? Do you ever go to the movies?
I do once in a while. I do think the whole experience of a movie theater is a whole different ballgame than what, especially with a horror movie or, any kind of action movie. There's nothing than being in surround sound and having that, moment of just being totally engrossed in that film.
And there's nothing like movie theater popcorn. Although, as
Right.
you'll see from my
I like the
YouTube short,
pretzels.
it's like, don't get the large because it's got like a zillion calories.
I also think the peanut M&Ms, it's the only place where I will buy the peanut M&Ms
Oh,
and
it's
eat.
so
It's like
great.
there's no rules,
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Melissa, I know you're on the film
Yes.
festival circuit now, but
I live in Valley Forge, Pennsylvania, and Phoenixville is our town, 3 miles from my house. There is an old theater there that's been there forever and ever. It's called the Colonial, and it has been revitalized, and it is a nonprofit, and we belong to it. They show new, old, they have music, they have all kinds of things going on there. And the cool thing about this theater is, do you remember the film from the late 50s called The Blob?
yes.
Yes.
Oh, that's so great.
It was filmed in that theater. Remember the scene where they
Wow.
come running out because the blob is coming?
That's so cool.
That's the Colonial Theater. So every year, if you're interested, you can come visit me. Every year in July, they have a blob fest. It's hilarious.
Wow.
And people
Very cool.
dress up like blobs and come running out of the film. So I do go as often as possible. And I like that theater feeling better than the multiplex. It's more intimate and it's awesome.
So Corbin, big screen, small screen, both?
Yeah, I'm a big screen person for sure. As much as I can, I go to the movie theater. There's times when I'll go 4 times a week, back-to-back days, and then there's times when I don't go for a little bit longer. But and my favorite snack is also peanut M&Ms. I only get that at the movie theater, and I'll just get a bag of peanut M&Ms and go watch any movie. But yeah, I there are still some movies that are meant just to be seen on the big screen, and I think The Brutalist is one. So it's sad that you have to watch it at home. But I truly believe that that's just the best way to watch a movie.
All right, Kyle. So your last, big screen, small screen, and then we're going to go in reverse because we're almost at time. So also add on how people can reach you.
Okay, so I'm just going to do my whole thing. Cool. I like going to the movies. I don't do it that often at the theater just because I don't watch movies that often. The last one I saw was Sonic the Hedgehog 3, which shows what my palate is like. It was good, though. It was very good. So, yeah, there's a place called Tempe Marketplace that my spouse and I go to. We always like to make a big thing out of it. So we'll get a slice of pizza, and then there's a Cold Stone Creamery literally right next to the movie theater. So we gotta go in. I'm gonna get my triple chocolate, whatever the chocolate as heck thing is. We're gonna throw it in a custom cup. We're gonna sneak it into the movies and we're gonna watch it. It's a big deal. And back when I lived in Minneapolis, had the exact same routine. It was Noodles and Company to the theater. It's just a fun little date day to do. So yeah, I don't go that often, but I really enjoy it when I do. As for me, you can find, since we're talking about storytelling, you can find me telling stories at questfriendspodcast.com. That is where I tell supernatural stories about a world where the realm of the dead is only a plane ride away, inspired by, you guessed it, cartoons. What a shock.
So to find you, people would just go to
questfriendspodcast.com or searching Quest Friends with an exclamation point on your podcasting app of choice, which if you're listening to this, you have a podcasting app of choice, even if it's YouTube.
All right, Corbin.
Yeah, so you can find me at k27media.com, the letter K, 27media.com. Not only do we do marketing, but also I always tell people that I do marketing on the week, but make movies on the weekends with my friends. I've done that for the past couple of years, and you can see some of the movies that I'm working on with some of my friends. A lot of them are not out yet, but they're coming out soon. So you can check those out there, and you can find me on my website.
Melissa.
You can find me at melissadavey, DAVEY.com, and you can see what I'm doing. You can see the trailers for the 2 films that I currently have going. You can Stream Beyond 60, which was my first film. And those are interviews with 9 women over the age of 60, showing their continued relevance and resilience and very inspirational. And now Climbing into Life is in its 14th film festival in Iowa.
Wow.
Kyle, you said somebody was in Iowa with a film festival.
Iowa.
Decorah?
Cedar Rapids was where the one. It was a real small one.
Yeah,
That's the only way I won.
I'm going to Decorah for that one, but this is the 14th and we have 8 awards so far. So it's been really, really awesome. And now I'm working on a film out of New York City of circus people.
Oh, wow.
And I mean, aerialists. I just got the sizzle reel done for a show April 2nd up at the Slipper Room in New York City. So it's pretty cool to see older people flying through the air with the greatest of ease.
That's terrifying. I
Love
it.
And Jamie.
Hi. You can find us on Facebook. If you just put Binge or Cringe in the search bar, it'll come up and you can join the group. We're also on Instagram at official Binge or Cringe. My personal is I am Jamie Jaffe on Instagram. Obviously, I'm Jamie Jaffe. And my partner, Susie, I need to put this in there. We have a podcast. We're going to boot up our 3rd season. Not That Deep. We talk to Real Housewives, reality show contestants, Peloton instructors. So if you want to tune in, it's Binge or Cringe, and you can find that wherever you stream your podcast.
So obviously, if you're listening to this, you do listen to podcasts. What's interesting, and Kyle was just quoted in this article that I wrote for my day job, which is I'm chief trend officer for an online magazine called Street Fight. And I just found out that Netflix is getting into the podcasting business, which makes so much sense because, you know, you watch true crime on Netflix and then you can listen to podcasters talk about it. So the entertainment world, the media world is all converging. Retailers are opening their own media channels. Hallmark has gotten to the movie business years ago. So entertainment is ubiquitous, one of my favorite words. But you can listen to all of the episodes of Age Blind and its precursor, which was called The Geezer Proofer, on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts. And if you want to see our lovely faces, if you are a visual person, we have a YouTube channel. So you can see the guests and put a face to the name and the voices. This month's theme is Lock All Things Green because it's St. Patrick's month. So tune in. We have very eclectic guests and eclectic topics coming down the pike. And then if you would like to be a guest in a future episode, our theme for April is spring cleaning and our theme for May is help. Giving and getting help. And then we haven't yet decided on our June theme, but usually I do something related to the summer and hot things. So stay tuned. And you could follow me on my new website. Please subscribe so you don't miss an episode of anything. It's nancyaf.com. F is in Frank, F is in fuck, F is in fabulous, F is in flawed. If you go to the website, you'll see all of my F words. And this year I made the decision to split my business brand from my personal brand, hence the birth of Nancy AF. So thank you all for listening. If you'd like to be a guest on an upcoming edition of Age Blind, just email me at nancyashenker@gmail.com. SHENKER. Thank you all for listening and watching. Thank you to our awesome movie fan guests. Hope to talk to you again. See you at the movies and peace out.
Yes.